The Duterte Gambit, why neutrality is the ultimate power move. The architect of autonomy. For decades, Philippine foreign policy followed a predictable, almost submissive script. We were the little brown brother in Asia, a reliable junior partner to the United States. But in 2016, Rodrigo Duterte tore that script to pieces. To the Western media, he was unpredictable or pro-China. But if you look at the board through the lens of game theory, you see a much more calculated move. Duterte wasn't looking for a new master in Beijing. He was reacting to a savior in Washington that had become unreliable. He didn't want to leave the U.S. alliance. He wanted to fix the math of it. He wanted the Philippines to stop being a buffer and start being a player. Today, we're breaking down the game theory of the Duterte Doctrine, from the struggle for arms to the secret role as a mediator between superpowers. The reciprocity problem, the Japan standard. In game theory, an alliance is a cooperative game built on reciprocity. You give something, and you get something of equal value. For years, the Philippines gave the U.S. strategic access to the archipelago. In return, we expected an ironclad defense. But Duterte looked at our neighbors and saw a glaring asymmetry. He saw Japan and South Korea, nations that the U.S. treats with the highest level of strategic respect. Japan has a mutual defense treaty that results in F-35s, Aegis destroyers, and high-tech intelligence sharing. The Philippines? We were being handed refurbished Vietnam-era helicopters and second-hand Coast Guard cutters. When Duterte looked at the math, he saw that the U.S. was treating the Philippines as a low-cost buffer. They wanted us to stand in the way of China, but they didn't want to give us the teeth to actually defend ourselves. He didn't abandon the U.S. He realized the U.S. had already strategically abandoned the idea of a strong, independent Philippines. The arms embargo and the struggle for upgrade. The turning point wasn't just rhetoric, it was procurement. Duterte wanted to modernize the armed forces of the Philippines AFP. He wanted to buy weapons to ensure we wouldn't be forever dependent on the West. But every time he tried to buy, he was met with roadblocks. The U.S. Congress blocked the sale of 26,000 assault rifles and other hardware, using human rights as a lever. From a realist perspective, this was an attempt to keep the Philippines in a state of strategic dependency. If you can't buy your own guns, you have to rely on the guy who gives them to you for free. Duterte's move to look at Russia and China for rifles and transport planes wasn't a pivot of loyalty. It was a counter move. In game theory, this is called diversifying your payoffs. By showing Washington that he had other sellers, he was forcing the U.S. to realize that their monopoly on Philippine defense was over. He was fighting for the right to be an armed ally, not a helpless one. The Trump connection, the neutral mediator. One of the most ignored chapters of this era is the relationship between Duterte and Donald Trump. While the liberal establishment in Washington criticized Duterte, Trump saw him as a pragmatic realist. This led to a fascinating development in the game. Rather than being a pawn in the U.S.-China rivalry, Duterte positioned the Philippines as a neutral ground. He envisioned a country where nations in conflict could come to negotiate. Did you know that Trump actually reached out to Duterte to act as a bridge with North Korea? Trump asked Duterte to use his lines to Kim Jong-un to help facilitate a dialogue. This is the mediator's payoff. By being the only leader who could talk to the Americans, the Chinese, and even the pariahs like Russia and North Korea, Duterte was elevating the Philippines' status. He wasn't picking a side. He was making Manila the diplomatic hub of Asia. He understood that the safest place for a small nation is not in the trenches of one side, but at the head of the negotiating table. The chicken game. Why we cannot demonize China. Finally, let's look at why Duterte refused to demonize China. In game theory, if you are the smaller player in a game of chicken between two giants, the worst thing you can do is weld your steering wheel in one direction. If the Philippines joins the U.S. in containment, we lose our strategic autonomy. We become a target for China's economic and military retaliation. But by keeping the lines open with Beijing, Duterte was playing a hedging strategy. He told China, "We won't be a base for American aggression against you. But in return, you must respect our people and invest in our growth." It wasn't about liking China. It was about the geography of survival. You don't have to love your neighbor, but you are a fool to set his house on fire when you live in the same building. He sought a grand bargain, trading a reduction in military tension for economic development. While the results were mixed, the logic was sound. A neutral Philippines is more valuable to the world than a Philippines that is merely a front line for American missiles. Conclusion: the legacy of realism. Rodrigo Duterte's foreign policy was often misunderstood because it was viewed through the lens of Western values rather than nationalist realism. He saw a world where the Saviour was more interested in keeping us dependent than making us strong. He saw a world where being a loyal ally meant being the first to die in a war that wasn't ours. His balancing act, seeking a Japan-level treaty while talking to the enemies of the West, was an attempt to reclaim Philippine agency. He didn't want to be a pawn. He wanted the Philippines to be the mediator, the hub, and the sovereign master of its own geography. In the game of empires, the most dangerous move isn't standing up to your enemies. It's asking your friends for the respect you've already earned. So, was Duterte's independent foreign policy a roadmap for the future or a missed opportunity? Can the Philippines ever truly be neutral in a world of giants? Let's get a real conversation going in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more deep dives into the game of power.